Welcome, everybody, to the Indie Publisher Bookstore podcast. Today I have Jason Crawford with me. He is the author of the novels Chains of Prophecy and Bonds of Faith, amongst others. Jason, how are you doing today?
Life is great. NaNoWriMo's kicking my butt, though.
NaNoWriMo?
National Novel Writing Month.
It took me a second. I was like, yeah, I've read it, but I haven't heard anybody actually pronounce it out loud. So I was like, wait a minute. Yes, National Novel Writing Month. When did that start? I've actually seen that a lot amongst a lot of the authors on Twitter and Facebook and everything.
I have no idea when it started officially. I think it was in the early 2000s. You know, it had to be an internet thing, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, I know I used to be part of a writers group way back in the early 2000s online. I can't remember what it's called. I don't even know if the website is still up at this point. So long ago. All right. So, Jason, for those that are possibly hearing you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm 34 years old. I live in Hawaii. I've got 3 kids, all boys, with one more kid on the way, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've been writing since September 2013, and it just kind of happened. My sister-in-law was all like, hey, guys, why don't we sit down? I've got these ideas for a book I've been wanting to write for a while. Why don't we just do this? And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, right. That's pretty cool, though. So your sister-in-law is the one that kind of encouraged you and got you started doing this, huh?
That's right, and I've thanked her extensively. And it's immortalized in writing, too, so, you know.
Hey, that's awesome. So now we know the why. Did she give you the idea for your first book, or was that something that you came up with on your own?
The first book I wrote was inspired by a gaming campaign, a role-playing game campaign that I had played a few years prior. You know, I pulled a few characters and concepts for the world, and then just went to town.
Oh, okay. That's pretty darn interesting. I know a lot of the old, good lord, Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms. I actually used to love reading a lot of those back when TSR, Wizard of the Coast, was had a lot of those stories going on. I know they still do the Forgotten Realms, and now there's I believe it's called Ebonheart, but I definitely understand that. That's a very cool source of inspiration right there. So what kind of characters do you like to write?
That's a good question. Normally, I write characters that I like to imagine them as being real people. Like, I don't imagine them as characters at the time. So basically what I do is I get the kernels of an idea for the 2 or 3 main characters. Mm-hmm. For instance, in Chains of Prophecy, when I started that one, which is my first published novel, I decided that the protagonist would be a genius-level accountant who liked to keep himself in decent shape. And the antagonist would be a businessman who was doing unethical things for the greater good. And so I picked up their names, and I decided that the central conflict would be that this businessman had somehow captured the Archangel Gabriel and was using her knowledge of heaven and inspiration to come up with inventions and innovations for the good of all people.
Wow. That's a pretty lofty story concept there to be starting out with. Goodness. So how did that one do after you wrote it? Were you satisfied with the rough draft, or how did that whole process go?
Well, the rough draft is always crap, right?
Right.
But no, I really enjoyed that book. The characters are some of the best ones I've written, and Bonds of Fate is the sequel to that book. Both books have won awards. So, you know, some people like them. They've got over 4-star averages everywhere that they're posted.
Now, see, that's awesome, because I'm guessing you self-published both of these books first, or did you go through traditional publishing?
No, it's all me. It's always been all me and my wife.
See, now that is awesome, and that's kind of what we like to talk about, is just the whole self-publishing process and indie authors and how, what the struggles are and everything like that. But first, I'm loving hearing about these successes. So, these characters, first off, I love this idea of the unethical businessman who's just trying to do right, and then a genius level accountant. So how does an accountant work as a protagonist? Explain that.
Well, the thing is he starts off the book, and because the book has angels and stuff in it, there's an element of religious mythology that goes with it. It's not a religious book, but it draws on a lot of apocrypha from various religions.
Right.
Okay, I have to clarify that because some people see angels and demons and God and stuff, and they're like, oh, it's a Christian book. I'm like, no, it's not. Okay.
That's fine.
But so anyway, so he's a humanist. He doesn't believe in God, but his family's very religious. So that's, in the book you find out that that's caused a little bit of strife between them, and he doesn't call them as much as he should. And he's worried about his career and all that kind of stuff. He's a relatively good person, but, he's not a saint.
Okay.
Anyway, so he has this weird kind of dream/vision thing that I won't go into too much. But when he describes that to his mother, just kind of, it's bothering him. And so he talks to his mom about it. Instead of having that was a horrible dream, I don't know what that's about, she just kind of looks at him for a second. And then she goes into the back room and pulls out this book. And this book has been passed down since the ages of King Solomon. And it's all the spells that he used in order to control the angels and demons and genies that he used to build his temple.
Wow.
And so she tells him, that that's what this is, and he's like, that's crap. That's not even possible. And so he walks out.
Right.
Like any normal person who doesn't, think that that's...
Right, but... but then he
that's
thinks
what I'd have been like, you're losing it, Mom. I don't know what's going on here.
Right, and then I guess he realizes, I should have listened to Mom in the beginning.
Well, that's after they get shot.
Ah, wow, okay.
That's after they get killed. Because the businessman, he's using an adulterated copy of those same spells. That's how he captured Gabriel. And so when he finds out that the original has resurfaced, he goes after it because that's the only thing that can get in his way. And if he can get it, then he's got an even better shot at doing what he's trying to do.
Okay. So we have a hero who doesn't necessarily want to be a hero. He doesn't believe in everything he's fighting for, but there's somebody coming and trying to do bad things to his family. So now he's like, look, I'm going to have to stop you from doing this.
Exactly. And he has this whole, this whole mental trauma. His parents are dead. He's having these weird dreams. He's trying to find answers somewhere,
Right.
It's very rough on him at the beginning of that book.
Interesting. And this story here, I know there's always a lot of debate amongst authors whether or not it's a plot-driven or character-driven story. So how is this story, because I haven't had a chance to read it myself yet, but would you consider it more of a character-driven piece, or like does the character go through a lot of major changes over time during the story?
My books have actually been complimented very strongly on their characters and the fact that the characters do change. So, that makes me happy. When I write them, I don't have the plot in mind. I have no idea what's going to happen. All I know is why they're fighting in the first place, what the conflict is. So I just kind of follow them around and write down what they're doing.
No, I like that. So basically, you're like, okay, here's character A, here's the antagonist, here's the MacGuffin, go.
Exactly. And the thing is the characters will tell me stuff that I didn't know about them and about their lives and about what's going on. Like I didn't know that my main character for that book, Samuel Buckland, I didn't know that he was like one of those guys who avoids shopping because it's annoying. Until he opened up his cabinet and all he had was Cheerios. He's
right.
like, and so he's looking in there and he's like, I could go shopping or I could order food. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, that's you. Right, okay.
Right. So That says a lot right there. The fact that the characters are telling you about themselves. I've heard that from other authors in the past, where they'll say, "Yeah, I didn't know this about my character." Did that shock you when things like that happened when you were, especially when you first started out? I'm sure now it doesn't, shock you anymore. But when you first started writing, did that shock you when it seemed like your characters were telling you about themselves as you were writing?
It actually just made me happy, because I got to be the first person to read it.
Okay, right.
You write the kind of books you like to read. And so, I'm writing this, but it's more like I'm reading it. So I'm getting to be like, holy, what do you do? Wait, what? The whole time, just
right.
just boggled by what the characters are doing.
That's cool, man, and that's always good when you're able to read your own work and be able to be like, man, I'm just as surprised as anybody else, and this is amazing stuff, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
I think it makes it more authentic that way, honestly.
It does. It's kind of like it's displaying the passion that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I always said about indie authors and indie publishers. I know all writers are passionate about their work, don't get me wrong, but I feel like when you're writing a novel, especially your first time, and you're thinking, I'm going to self-publish this, you put as much passion and emotion and everything else. You get super excited about it, and it shows in your writing, and you do that because I guess a lot of people don't realize, hey, it's not like a Charles Dickens stretched out stories just for the heck of it to make sure his paycheck was a little bit larger, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about people who are like, I don't know if I'm going to get paid for this or not, so I'm going to put as much passion and love and of myself into the story as possible. So that is awesome, and that's what I love to hear from our authors here when we're talking to them. So of your, how many novels have you written so far at this point?
Published, I have 5. I have 1 more that's in editing. I've got 3 that are in various stages of completion.
Oh, wow. So that was, hold on, let me just make sure I got 1 more in editing. So that's a total of 9 that you're kind of working through, or 4 that you're kind of working through right now and getting them ready, and then 5 that you have actually already published.
That's right, yeah.
Awesome. So how long does it usually take you to write one of your novels?
It's a very disjointed process because I'm always writing something.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, which is why I have so much since September 2 years ago.
Right.
So it's like I'm working on a first draft, and while I'm doing that, the last first draft is just kind of sitting there cooling off for a month. After that month is over, I'll pause on the first draft I'm currently writing, go edit that other one, give it to my editor, who's my wife, and then go back and write, and then it's back and forth until that one's done, and then I go fully back onto this first one and finish it.
Oh, nice. So I like that process there.
And then NaNoWriMo, of course, just throws everything out the window because I have to put everything away while I start something new.
Well, now, is this your first year participating in NaNoWriMo, or?
It's actually my 3rd. If I win, which I'm on track to, then it'll be my 2nd win.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Awesome and crazy and has me staying up way too late sometimes.
Right. So let's, for those that don't know, since you've been mentioning it, NaNoWriMo, can you kind of explain how that works as far as winning NaNoWriMo and the whole process and everything?
Sure. So like we said, it stands for National Novel Writing Month. It goes from midnight on November 1st to midnight November 30th.
Right.
And you have to write 50,000 words of new fiction in that amount of time. So, it comes out to an average of 1,667 words a day.
And I know some people may think, oh, yeah, 1,600 words, that's not, yeah, you may write that in emails and tweets, but when you start trying to write, that in a novel, you'll hit writer's block fast sometimes.
It can happen. And, the rules are that you can't go in it. You're supposed to start new. A lot of people don't, and I don't have a problem with that personally. I'm not like, well, you didn't really win. But according to the way it was, the spirit of it, you're supposed to start a new book on November 1st. You can have it outlined or plotted or whatever else you do. I did none of that because I never do. But you're not supposed to put the first word of the story in place until November 1st.
There you go. And yet you've won once already, and you're on track to win twice. And how exactly do you win a prize with NaNoWriMo?
Starting on the 20th, you're able to upload your writing for a word count. And if it comes out to 50,000 or higher, then congratulations, you won.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, have any of the stories that you've written so far been published, or do you just keep them on the back burner, or try to polish them?
The novel that I wrote for NaNoWriMo that I won was Cycles of Destruction. That's the start of my science fiction series.
Okay.
It's about an ex-army sniper. He finds a computer program, an AI, that's been sent to Earth in order to start wiping humanity out so that we can start again, kind of like hitting the restart button.
Yes.
It turns out that this is the 5th time that that's happened.
Wow. Okay.
And so normally he'd just be like, well, I'm kind of a human being and I don't want this to happen. But the way the AI works is it has to bond to an organic component. And from that organic component, it learns what about humanity needs to be destroyed and what needs to be preserved. Unfortunately, the organic component it bonds to is his 6-year-old son.
Ooh.
So he can't just get rid of it.
Wow, I can only imagine what kind of trials that character has to deal with right there. So, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, where did that story idea come from?
Totally just something I came up with. You know, story ideas really just come out of like hey, that would be cool. And then, you know, they don't come from the sky. They're just random murmurings. I think one of my biggest inspirations was actually Stephen King's memoir on writing.
Oh, okay.
And in that book, he talks about his history of writing, how he came to it. And then the second part is all about his process and his part of the craft and how he does it. And in it, he says, coming up with ideas looks remarkably to laymen like goofing off. Because a writer will just take a pad of paper and a pen and just kind of stare off into space for a while and then jot some stuff down and then do it again.
That sounds about right. That definitely sounds about right. I know a lot of times in the past people have taken, inspiration from things that have actually been going on in science. But since you mentioned you write science fiction, how do you feel about the way things now seem like science fiction, so to speak, is becoming more like science fact?
Well, I think it's awesome. I'm personally a huge proponent of the colonization of other planets.
Right.
I think we need to do it. I think we should already be doing it. And so I like to write about things like that. I have a science fiction short story that I wrote. It's called Elpis Nova. It's available on Wattpad for free for anyone who wants to read it. And it's about, extragalactic colonization, humanity being in a cryo ship and flying off to somewhere else.
See, and that's the part that amazes me, because it seems like we're, only a few decades from sending people like manned flight to Mars, and heck, who knows, maybe we'll send somebody up to colonize the moon. And there's that brief moment earlier this year, I don't know if you heard about it, where some people were saying NASA had discovered a warp field. And
yeah. I was hoping.
Right? Yeah, right. Like, everybody was like, man, I would hope it's really a warp field. Then one of my coworkers, and I need to confirm it, I haven't had a chance to, but he was telling me that he heard that somebody thinks that they've once again figured out cold fusion, but they're supposed to be turning it on at the end of the month. And I'm like, I can't wait to see that if that's true.
I did know that there was a university in California that had gotten more out than put in.
Really?
That did happen. But I think that was just in an experimental environment. So I don't know if it's been repeated or, modular, made so they can use it.
Right. Wow. See, that's the part. There's too many people skating around it like they're so close, and I don't even know what to say about that when, like, okay, Case in point, Star Trek. I don't know if you're a Trekkie.
Yep.
But it's funny how, they have different, on each data pad, they had certain, like, I got this story on this data pad and this other story on this data pad. Mm-hmm. And then I look at my iPad and I'm like, yeah, but I got 300 on mine. What was wrong with your guys? Right? And you're looking at, I'm into, I watch a lot of video gaming news as well, and you hear the Microsoft HoloLens and the Omni and different things that are coming out, those technologies, and, they're creating holodecks basically now, and I don't even know how to fully fathom what I'm seeing sometimes when, in life. So it's kind of like, where does science fiction, when does it stop being, oh yeah, we're just writing a regular old, mystery novel? I mean, where do you see the future of science fiction, basically, is where I'm trying to get at. Because if all of this that we thought was never going to happen, or so far in the future that we'd never see it, is happening, what is science fiction going forward?
Well, science fiction's always going to be pushing the boundary of what we have and what we can do. And it's going to continue to explore the ethics of it, actually. It's like, okay, if we colonize a planet, what if that planet has life on it? What are we entitled to do? It gives us a safe place to examine those scenarios. It's like, well, do we raise the planet so we can live on it? What if it's dangerous to us? Do we go somewhere else? What do we do?
Exactly. And I think you're right there, because a lot more stories that I'm reading tend to be more on they focus more on the ethics, less on the science, more like where Heinlein, he focused more on the idea of what is going on within this. Like, the science fiction was there, obviously. It was, Stranger in a Strange Land and his other stories. There was science fiction in those, but there was a lot more, it made you think a lot more about who you are as a person, and I see that coming back around full circle where that's happening. But there's some things that are happening in true science. I don't know if you heard about it, but they believe they found a star that, after doing some analysis, looks like that there's potentially somebody building a Dyson sphere around it. Have you heard about that?
I have not heard about that, but that sounds cool. Though, if we're noticing that they're building a Dyson sphere, that means they built the thing probably hundreds of years ago.
Exactly. So I'm wondering to myself, I'm like, so there's a Dyson sphere that's been built. It's sitting out there. And what do you do once you have that kind of almost limitless power going for you? What do you do with yourself?
What are they doing with it right now? Correct.
Oh, no, there you go. There's another story to write. The people that are building the Dyson sphere on the other side of the galaxy, it's insane. I don't. I swear, the more I read about technology news and everything else, I just I'm like, heck, I might need to just start writing fantasy again. It'll be easier because
nobody can tell you're wrong,
right? And it's like, I don't, and then you don't have to feel like you're trying to keep up with what the guys are really doing in real life.
Mm-hmm. Well, my wife is writing a series of Mars colonization stories, and stuff keeps coming out, and she's like, "Man, did I do this right now? Are they getting ahead of me?"
Right, and you don't know. It's like, because especially when they get to the point where they have science fact now, then it's kind of like, people start looking, oh, well, your story isn't as factual as it. You're like, hey, I wrote the story before they actually, a few months before they did that.
It's the Jurassic Park syndrome.
Right. Exactly. Like, that's not a real dinosaur. Well, hey, it was when we made the movie.
Yeah, that's what we knew then, guys. No, actually, have you seen the new one, Jurassic World?
Oh, my God, yes.
Okay, I really enjoyed that, but I was so proud of them because they know that the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World dinosaurs don't look like we actually think dinosaurs look anymore. So, but they stayed true to their world, and they kept them the same. They didn't put feathers on them. They didn't make them look like we think they do. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Wu, he said specifically, if you wanted realistic dinosaurs, they'd probably look a lot different if we hadn't been messing with their DNA. And so I was like, hey, you explained it. You acknowledged that you knew it was an issue, and you gave us an in-world explanation. Thank you. Move on.
Exactly. Because you're right. It's like every time I hear something new and different about, oh, we think dinosaurs look like this, and we think dinosaurs look like that, and I was just reading something where, heck, they think chickens are descendants of velociraptors, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even know anymore. You guys,
it's like my world can't handle that. No.
Right? It's like I don't want to know anymore, because I used to always be of the mindset of, you want to know what a dinosaur looks like? Go look at an alligator. There you go. That's the closest thing you'll ever see. Now it's kind of like, oh, nope, that's even changed. But there's so many. I think what I would like to see, and tell me how you feel about this, where we start seeing more science fiction that's based today, but on things that are mysteries to us at this point. Like, we don't know what's going on under the deep sea. We don't know how, what the Earth looked like, hundreds of thousands of years ago as far as civilization goes. Because I was reading an article, and God, I wish I could remember the link to it, but they were talking about how, science says that there's no evidence of a civilization before, oh, God, I can't even remember the group of people now. But then they're like, but have you ever noticed that, if the oceans were lower, as they say they were, thousands and thousands of years ago, for all we know, the remnants of civilization are buried deep down in the waters where we can't see them, and because we can't go down there that deep, and we don't know what we're looking for in those areas, because civilization always follows the coastline.
Right.
So if the oceans rose, what do you think about that? Like, you think that's anywhere near plausible?
It's certainly plausible. We've only explored a tiny bit of the ocean. So that's one of those things where you just kind of have to put your hands up and say, could be.
Exactly.
Because there's no evidence for it yet, but we haven't explored it. It's like aliens.
True enough. Right. So tell us about the process of when you self-published your first novel. What was that like? Did you go directly straight to Amazon? Did you kind of spread the wealth to Barnes & Noble's, Amazon, and all those different online venues? Like, once the editing was done, how did you decide where to place your novel and market it?
I'm a big proponent of trying to make the book available to everyone. So,
Okay.
And not everyone uses Amazon, and there are some people who are annoyed when all you do is use Amazon. So I'm like, well, then I'll put it everywhere. So, it's available. All my books are available in paperback through CreateSpace and through Ingram Spark.
Okay.
So, you can order the paperbacks from Barnes & Noble or from Amazon. I've got a couple of them in hardback, but those are a lot more expensive, unfortunately, because I can't order lots of them. So
Right.
they have to be printed that way.
Awesome.
And ebooks, I upload directly to Kindle, to KDP, Kindle Direct Program. But also I use Smashwords, which you might have heard of. It's an ebook aggregator.
Right.
And it sends to Apple and to Kobo and to the Nook and all those things.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of those. Okay.
And also my books are available on Google Play.
Oh, wow.
Which has made me no money so far, so I'm forced to assume that most people don't use that.
Sadly.
It's like the reaction for most people is, wait, you can get books that way?
Exactly. I'm like, huh? Okay. So how did you market your book when you first did it? Because I know there's a lot of books out there, and authors don't find success because, they put it out there and they expect people just to magically get there to it. But, obviously nobody just magically gets there. So how did that work for you, getting the book?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have tons of money to sink into marketing. I'm one of those guys. I'm a teacher. I got a full-time job, family to support, and my writing is not selling huge yet. So, I've got to pick and choose what I can do. So, I've submitted to a few contests, won a couple. I try to interact with people on social media. I have a book review blog where I mostly review indie books. I like to talk to people. And a lot of times when you talk to people, they'll ask you. And then you can say it and not feel like a total jerk for promoting yourself.
Right.
Also, though, I do really well at in-person events. It's really hard to market online, but when you have a booth and you have physical people, then you can show them what it is. You know, and
exactly.
They're in front of you and they're paying attention right now.
And I could definitely see that. That definitely would help out if you have their attention and you can sell it and just be like, hey, guys, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. These are my stories that I've been wanting to tell. So I definitely understand that. That is very cool. And what would you say, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out, who's self-published, and he's like, man, I just want to, and I'm not just talking about the marketing aspect, but what kind of advice would you give to that first-time novelist that's starting out, that's wanting to write this story? What would you tell them?
The first thing I tell everyone is write more.
Right.
Just write. And people ask me, they're like, well, how do you deal with writer's block? Or what do you do when you don't have an idea for a story or whatever? And I'm like, this never happens to me. I've been writing over 2 years pretty much nonstop. And I have not ever sat down at the page and like, oh, crap, I don't know what to do. Because any time that it's difficult, I write anyway. I just have the characters and they're doing something and I'm following them around and they whatever. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. But it's there. Once it's on the page, you can fix it.
Right.
Once your first draft is done, you can edit it and make it wonderful. But if you're afraid of getting the first draft, it'll never be anything.
See, and that's really good advice for a lot of people. If you don't finish, then you'll never know what you are capable of doing, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Because it's finishing, and a lot of people stand in their own ways, or a lot of people stand in their own way. It's because I guess some people are like, oh, what is it? What if it's not good enough, and all of that? But that's really good advice for anybody coming after you, just to finish it, get it done, get it on the paper, or get it digital, and then do all the editing you need to do to clean it up. So it's very cool. See,
the nice thing is with self-publishing, and one of the main reasons I went this way, is you aren't beholden to anyone else.
Exactly.
You don't have a time limit to put in your next book. Nobody's coming after you saying you need to finish this or your contract is gone and we're going to take our money or whatever.
Right.
Okay? So if you have to edit it for 2 years, edit it for 2 years. It'll get done and you'll have a great book.
Exactly.
That's okay.
Very cool, Jason. Give me 1 second here. All right. So I think that about wraps it up for us today. I guess just one last question. Do you shoot for a purpose, like a set specific amount of words for every story that you write, or do you actually just go with the flow and see what happens?
The characters end their stories for me. There have been so many times where I'm like, damn, this book's shaping up to be a long one. I don't know. And then the main character's like, no, I got it. And then they come up with a solution to the problem, and I'm like, yeah, you got it. There we go.
Right? Awesome. Hey, Jason, thank you for your time. It's been wonderful having you here on the Indie Publisher Bookstore podcast. And can't wait to read your work and can't wait to talk to you after you get some more of those published, and we can talk some more about how things are going in the next couple of months.
That would be fantastic. I've had a great time, and I really hope to talk to you guys again.
All right. Appreciate it. Have a good one.